What is going on, guys? Welcome back to The Shelf, and today in this video I was fortunate enough to get to interview two of the creative minds behind 2015's A Christmas Horror Story, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. So I figured what better way to celebrate that than by getting to talk to and pick the brains of one of the writers as well as one of the directors behind one of my favorite Christmas horror movies of all time. So in this video, first I got to talk to Mr. Doug Taylor, one of the writers on the film, and then in the second interview that you'll see, I got to interview Grant Harvey, who was one of the directors on the film. Just as a heads up, due to some technical difficulties, some of the audio early on in my interview with Doug Taylor is a little garbled, it's a little messy. My good buddy Tyler helped fix it as much as we could, but it's still, not the best. It's at its worst in the very beginning, and then as the interview goes on, the issue starts to resolve itself a little bit, so I won't be offended if you want to skip ahead a little bit in the interview just to get past that. Again, we did our best with what we had, so. And yeah, that's about it, guys. Please enjoy these interviews that I was able to conduct, and if you haven't seen it, go out and watch A Christmas Horror Story from 2015.
All right, guys, welcome back to The Shelf. Today with me, I am joined by Mr. Doug Taylor. Doug Taylor, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you, Mark.
So Doug Taylor is the writer of the film Splice, as well as one of the writers on A Christmas Horror Story from 2015, which is one of my favorite Christmas horror films, and it's turning 10 this year. So I guess to start off, how does that feel, just knowing that this movie is 10 years old now?
It makes me feel like time is accelerating at an uncontrollable pace, but I am gratified, for instance, that you're interested in it 10 years down the line, and it keeps popping up on people's lists of best Christmas horror movies, so that's great. It did not get a massive distribution at the time, so it's great to see something has some staying power. Given how many movies are made in 10 years, it's beautiful to see it come back up and get a little attention.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that horror films in particular tend to have like a second and a third life on home video and streaming, because that's where I first discovered this movie, was on Netflix, and it would have been around 2016, I would say, and I was just looking for something to watch. It was probably December. I was with a buddy, and we just kind of threw it on, not really knowing what to expect. And, by the time it was over, we kind of looked at each other like, that was really good. Like, we actually enjoyed it quite a bit, more than we were maybe expecting. We were kind of just trying to kill some time. And it's become a tradition for me. I watch it every single year. So,
oh, wow. Thank you.
Yeah, no, for sure. And so I guess I'll just ask you, how did you get involved with the film? How did that whole process come about, signing on and everything?
Well, I have a working relationship with Copperheart Entertainment. They're the producers of it. So they had also produced Splice, which I had co-written. So, we're in touch, and, we've had other things in development that may or may not have happened. So, yeah, I am one among Copperheart, is great at returning to talent that they've enjoyed working with in the past. So, for instance, the three directors on this project were Steve Hoban, who's the principal, owner of Copperheart, as well as one of the producers, and Grant Harvey and Brett Sullivan. All had roles in Ginger Snaps, which had been a successful. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a werewolf movie.
It's another Canadian film, right?
Another Canadian film by Copperheart. And a piece of trivia is the town. I'm trying to remember what exactly the town is called.
Bailey Downs?
Bailey Downs, yeah. It was actually the town that Ginger Snaps was set in.
Oh, cool. I did not put I never knew that.
There's a little bit of linkage there. as well as the three directors. Steve Hoban was the producer of Ginger Snaps, and both Brett Sullivan and Grant Harvey had directed sequels to Ginger Snaps. There have been 2 sequels, so it's kind of there's a little bit of a family going on there in terms of people who've worked together and continue to get enlisted in their projects, and it's certainly a trust when you've worked with a producer that you've had some success with and been treated well by. But I think the more causal link was we had a bunch of the people I just mentioned with Copper Heart had done this kind of experiment, and it was with Vincenzo Natali as well, who's the director of Splice. We made this it was supposed to be a web series called Darknet, and it actually became, I think it was 6 half-hours that we'd have made to be a web series, but they ended up actually being on Netflix in 14 countries. So it became more like a show. And it was an anthology horror show, in the sense, not like American Horror Story, but in the sense that each episode was its own thing. But even within each episode, only being a half hour or less, there would be 3 or 4 little stories inside. So it was like anthologies inside of an anthology episode. And the technique that we found worked really effectively was if you took 4 very short stories, and instead of just laying them back to back throughout the half hour, if you sort of jumped from one to the other, you get to have that. It feels a little more sophisticated than watching, let's say, Creepshow back in the 70s. But also to have some kind of linkage. We found that if you overlapped even just a character knowing another character, and then splitting off into different stories that somehow converge again, or just have these slight incidental overlaps, was really effective for Darknet. So the producers decided, let's do that for a feature film, and let's do that with the Christmas Horror Story. Let's have not like 4 or 5 discrete chapters, but let's have it seem like all these things are happening kind of simultaneously. And that's the structure of the film. Some people like it. I think some people, I read a few reviews that would have preferred them just to be separate issues, but I think it works. And particularly by the climax, where we have Krampus and Santa intersecting, that's really satisfying. And then, without giving away too much, in case this podcast inspires anyone to watch it, there's another linkage then with Bailey Downs, and they're having a certain mall situation. So just to be clear on the process, though, I hope I'm not anticipating your questions, but we were 5 writers originally, and we each were asked to come up with a Christmas Horror Story, and we all did 5 separate stories that had nothing to do with each other, and we didn't get in a room and say, how can we merge these all together? So it wasn't treated like a writing room. It was just, I think maybe even before they decided that they were going to have them braided or intertwined, I think, we just each tried to come up with a separate story. So my contribution to this anthology was basically the zombie elves section. So Santa up north, the zombie elves, and then by extension, also the Krampus face-off, which I'm not giving anything away there because it's on the poster.
Yeah.
And then then the finale as well. Anything that had Santa in it was my contribution.
So as you had mentioned, the segment that you wrote it's interesting that you guys didn't collaborate in advance, because the placement of it towards the end specifically, and the twist that it has, is really, it feels like it was meant to be there. Was that something that you guys kind of realized, like, this is something that should go at the end? Just because I don't want to give it away either, sort of what happens. Um, but there is a sort of reveal that happens, and the segment itself is sort of separate from the other segments, being that the other ones are all kind of connected. And there's something about the Santa one, the North Pole stuff, where it does feel, it's obviously very much not taking place in Bailey Downs. So I was just
Sure.
wondering how that all kind of fell into place.
I no, it was not, it wasn't planned ahead of time. In fact, I can't even take credit for it. The producers, which again, Steve Hoban also directed my segment. So he directed the Santa and the Elves portions as well as producing. And his producing partner, Mark Smith, and possibly Brian Morey. I know they had some talks about how do we, because we worked separately, they became the hub to sort of ask the writers, well, how can we link yours to this other one? And, we would sort of brainstorm, well, maybe, I think in one case, the teens that go into the church basement or the school basement, one of their numbers wasn't able to go with them because she had to go with her family, which then became the Krampus story. And, those things were kind of, I hate to admit it, but they were kind of artificially just created as, let's find a way to make these things intersect and it'll be more satisfying. And I'll tell you an interesting story about writing. So basically, I was just writing a straight up, Santa's elves become zombies and he has to kill them all story. And my original title, there's no titles to these segments because they're intertwined and there's no place to put a title card, but I'd originally, on paper, I'd called it Elvian Flu, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And here's a sort of an interesting side story is the producers really wanted to see if we could tell that story in reverse order, almost like Memento. So for all of the writing, the Santa story happened in reverse order. So it sort of ended with a sort of teaser about from the Krampus. Pretty much like it is now. We see Santa, he's already kind of messed up and he thinks he hears something and he turns his head, and then we go to the opening credits. And then from there, each of my segments, like Memento, each segment of my segments was, starting from the very worst, Santa having to kill his wife, then Santa having to fight all those elves, and then the more elf mayhem, and then the first elf getting sick, all happened in reverse order. I was a little skeptical because I knew that the other stories were going to have a forward timeline, and I didn't really see how that would work. But I went with it, and we trusted that it would. And sure enough, when they cut it, it did not. So they just put it back. They just put it back in chronological. It would have worked if it had been a standalone, but it didn't work because, again, every other timeline is going forward. It was disorienting to have my timeline going backwards. So then, coming to, and I'm trying to talk around there's a surprise ending, folks. So I'm going to try to talk around it. So once I was clear of what they intended, and I give them all the credit for coming up with the idea. I have a feeling Mark Smith was the engineer of that twist. I just thought it's brilliant, and then I executed it as well as I could on paper. And then I think they even, in shooting and editing, they even pulled it off even smoother. I think everybody comments on that ending as being like a really satisfying way to wrap up that movie, and to bring William Shatner into it again. He has a little bit of a monologue.
Yeah,
There's a melancholic monologue, drunk monologue at the end.
he starts out so jolly too, and he just kind of
Hmm.
progressively gets so much more dejected. I'm glad you brought him up because that ending does make the movie. It is so brilliant and it recontextualizes everything you've seen up until then. Because for the most part, everything you're seeing in the other three segments is sort of based in reality. And then there's this one, which is so kind of othered, and you might be watching it for the first time thinking, well, this just kind of feels a little else, a little elsewhere. And then when you realize what's going on, you sort of realize that, it actually makes a lot of sense. And furthermore, with the William Shatner wraparound, which I love that wraparound segment. I love William Shatner's role there. He really embodies that sort of, local town DJ persona. And there's something so cozy about his stuff. He's having a little eggnog, and he's just trying to enjoy the holiday as best he can in spite of everything that happened the year prior with like the murders and stuff that happened at the school and whatnot. And so I feel like we have to address this ending. So for anyone who hasn't seen the film, maybe skip ahead in the video a little bit, or pause and go watch it and come back. But just so Storm and Norman is a character that we are introduced to, and if you're paying attention, you will notice that it is the same actor who plays Santa. He looks different, but if you pay attention, and this is what I mean by repeat viewings, you start to put the dots together, and it all just makes so much sense, and it's so satisfying when you're. I love a twist ending that has breadcrumbs that you can follow, where if you can actually figure it out if you're paying attention. It doesn't just kind of come out of nowhere, and then maybe they show you some stuff that happened off screen that you didn't even see until now. But no, you can actually kind of put together what's going on a little bit, and I really admire that about this film.
Oh, well, I'm glad you do, and I'm proud of it. I mean, I'm proud to have been a part of it. The ending in particular, because I had to put it to paper, without necessarily originating the ending. But yeah, I think that's the measure of those, twist endings is, the was it The Sixth Sense?
Yeah.
Was kind of like the uh, the sort of Wikipedia entry for twist endings, and you have to. The test is on a second viewing: did they cheat?
Mhm.
So when you watch that and you realize, oh, there is no cheat. So I don't think there's any fear of me spoiling The Sixth Sense at this point.
Yeah. I should hope not.
But if you watch it and you're looking for some kind of evidence that that Bruce Willis isn't already a ghost, you don't find it because they're careful, and we managed to do that as well. We didn't have as much of a trapeze act to pull off. But the fact that Storm and Norman doesn't really have a beard, if I recall, in those helped.
No, I don't think he does. Maybe a
You'd
little.
only recognize it in a second viewing. I
Yeah.
don't think anyone said, "Oh, I saw that coming." Um, he was grouchy. Plus, we held back on the note that he slaps on the window. What was it? "Fuck Christmas."
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that.
And he has that breakdown. So yeah. Again, we could have just done, 4 in a row, each with a title, and maybe had, some kind of merging fifth element. But I think it works better this way because it all feels of a piece. And it's a little bit like a really long joke that you sit through, but the punchline's so good, it's worth it.
I agree so much, and I love that the story is told the way that it is. I really enjoy anthology horror films, and something that they always do is the conventional structure of, start stop sort of thing. And I like that all of the plots, every story kind of concludes in the third act. So it's kind of just like this nonstop, you know, like gut punch of like, the finale in the basement of the church or the school, and the finale of the changeling, and it's all just kind of coming at you, and it all pays off at once rather than the kind of drip feed sort of formula that most anthologies do. So I really think that it works personally.
Well, I hope so. I was looking for. There have been a few movies. Was it Trick or Treat?
I wanted to mention that film as well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't know at the time. I wasn't familiar with the film, believe it or not, but it's drawn some comparisons for sure. But I don't think we were actively saying, "Oh, let's do what was it Michael Dougherty did,
Yeah.
and let's do a Christmas version." That wasn't on our minds at all. But also, there's another kind of sort of serendipitous connection there, because as people have pointed out, Trick or Treat did sort of intertwined stories about Halloween. We had already finished A Christmas Horror Story, but we missed Christmas for a release. We just couldn't pull it off, or the distributors couldn't pull it off, or whatever the reason. So we had to sit on it for a year. And in that year, Michael Dougherty released Krampus.
Oh, yeah,
which has not really been in the people who know about Krampus, but not it wasn't really a cultural milestone that everyone or touchstone that everyone knew about. Krampus kind of unveiled, there's this Krampus myth that I've never heard of, or young people have never heard of, and so he beat us to the punch in release, but we actually had this thing in the can before Krampus went into production. So that's a bit of a disappointment, because then we seemed like the copycats for the second time with a Michael Dougherty film.
Yeah, I didn't put that together. That it's that's sort of a thing that you see in Hollywood a lot, right? This sort of twin movie phenomenon where no one's either really ripping off one or the other. It just kind of something's in the air, and these things just kind of come about. Yeah, Krampus is a film that I enjoy for sure, and I think if you like Krampus, certainly you'll like Christmas Horror Story, because one of the things I wanted to mention about A Christmas Horror Story is just how well it balances so many different tones, because there are the tones like your segment, which is so funny. Every time Santa throws like shiny through the window and he yells like "oh fuck" or something. And it's kind of like slow motion a little. It just makes me laugh, and all of Shiny's dialogue is so funny when he's like cursing out Mrs. Claus and stuff. Like, it's just so great. And then in that same film, you have all the stuff that's happening in the basement, and the stuff with the changeling segment, and like Scott Peters, and that whole dynamic, which is like very serious. And but at no point does it ever feel disjointed or anything. I think that's something that is not easily achieved, I think.
Yeah, and I think maybe the intertwining helped with that, because if you feel like, if you're trying to follow up, let's say, a comedy segment in an anthology with something deadly serious, maybe that's not a maybe you've primed the audience in the wrong way, or the opposite, something very tragic, and then you're supposed to try to make them laugh when you're thinking about what's happened to some poor kid. I think again, as Canadians, we're Canadian production with we got a lot of, and Copperheart is masterful at this, of getting a lot of juice out of a fairly modest budget. And so, when I say we couldn't pull this off, for the Christmas that it was almost finished for, Hollywood's so nimble. if they have a Christmas movie and they are running a little late, they can just throw resources at it and get it out pronto. So as I said, they got Krampus out in less than a year, and we had to sit on ours for over a year after, whatever it took from conception to filming. So we were actually hearing that there's this Krampus movie was being greenlit, and we were going, oh God, I hope we get ours out first. And then suddenly we hear it's like it's hitting theaters in a month. It's like, oh man.
Yeah, that's gotta suck. That's gotta suck. But I think it's nice because this movie I do really think has is continued year after year to find an audience, and I always try to spread the gospel of this movie to people. Anyone I think will enjoy it, because personally, I'm someone who in the past few years has kind of gotten tired of watching the same Christmas movies every December. So I'm always trying to find new ones. I just watched the '84 Christmas Carol with George C. Scott, and that was great. I had never seen that. So I'm trying to constantly add new stuff to my rotation, and I always recommend this one to horror fans in particular.
Well, proselytize on, my friend.
For sure. So sort of to what we were saying earlier is, another thing about this movie that I think makes it feel distinct is the way that, a lot of Christmas horror films are kind of just a horror film or a slasher film set to a Christmas backdrop. Like there's some lights, maybe there's a Santa. And this one actually kind of takes Christmas ideas and explores them, and not the conventional sort of Hallmark glossy kind of ideas. It's dealing with things like toxic family relationships, PTSD and trauma, and losing a child, things like this that are kind of intrinsically tied to the holiday. And I know you only wrote the one segment, but I was just wondering how you felt about that. Was that something you intended it with yours? And because it kind of serendipitously happened with all of the segments. I mean, it's there in all of them. And I think that's kind of great, because hearing you tell me that they were not meant to be, like there was not much collaboration between you guys, and then having it kind of turn out the way that it did, it feels intentional.
Yeah, I can't speak to the intentions of the others. The other writers, I mean, who I'm friendly with, and became, friendly with once we'd done this, because we, got to go to screenings together and whatnot. But again, I think, it was about the choices made. Probably the producers should get the credit for that, because I know here's my process. They said, come up with an idea for a Christmas horror that's going to be part of an anthology. So, something in the 15-minute range. 15, 20 minutes maximum. And I had just taken, a legal pad and jotted down a bunch of Christmas horror-y ideas. And I remember, so there was one, I think, where, a woman's alone at Christmas and she hears a noise in her chimney, and it's some dude in a Santa suit who's gone down the wrong chimney to surprise his family and got stuck up there. And then as she has this kind of discussion about how to get him out, he starts to feel more and more dangerous. And so that was one. But they were all had some kind of Christmas, like, as you put it, it wasn't just a horror story that happens to take place in late December. I was trying to find Christmas themes. And I think I handed over 4 ideas to Steve and Mark, and they came back and said, we're going to have to go with the zombie elves, in part because we're making a Christmas movie. And I think I was the only one who submitted one with actual Santa Claus, and it was just irresistible to them. There was a 5th story that we ended up dropping before going into production, partly because the length was getting too long, but because I think it was a very good story by a very good writer, but it felt a little bit more like it was a story that happened to take place at Christmas. And I think they decided, let's see, let's put that aside. And I think they were going to develop that as its own feature film, which I don't think ever happened, but that was the intention. So I think that was a good choice, partly because one more story. Let's say we have 4 stories, but then the Shatner part is the glue, and the surprise ending is I don't know what you'd call that, the construction paper that the glue messes up. So 5 full-length stories would be maybe too much. And if one of them just felt like it was, situated at Christmas instead of Christmas themed, it kind of would dilute the piece. So your observation is correct. There was a deliberate choice to keep these things about Christmas. So the Changeling story, you could argue, could happen anywhere, but it works very organically, very beautifully, that they're in the forest to get a Christmas tree, and that is what pisses off the Changeling, and possesses the sun. And I think that's where it would feel like a cheat if we just had scary things happen in December.
Yeah, it's almost like this inversion of like National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation, right? When they're going to get the tree. And it's like, what is the worst possible thing that could happen here? And I love the inclusion of the Scott Peters character in that segment, because we see him, and it's all woven so beautifully to me, like how he is the guy. He was like the first responder in the basement of the I guess it's like a convent story, that the school used to be a convent, something like that. So he's traumatized from that, and as a result, like his family life has suffered. He's got problems with his wife and his kid, and that's sort of just like that's already going on, which is bad enough. And then so there's very just human stuff going on, and then they find themselves in this like supernatural situation. And I don't remember who to attribute this quote to, but someone once said that like the best horror movies work if you take the horror out of them. So just whatever character stuff is already going on, you could just kind of pivot and make it into a drama, right? I don't know if that's universal. I'm sure there's exceptions where that doesn't work, but generally I find that's, a very interesting way to look at things. And I think that's true for almost all the segments here in this movie.
Well, maybe in particular, the Changeling episode was written by Pascal Trottier, and who had also worked on Darknet. And because, and I got to give it over to the performers, the husband, the wife, the kid. It just felt like a very credible family, struggling family, or struggling to hold together as a family. As you said, the father's traumatized. He's traumatized at that time of year in particular. And that's, and it's sewn right into the whole town is traumatized because of what had happened the year before. So the horror elements, if you can create a nice little foundation there, then the horror elements just feel like, extra treats in your stocking.
Yes, very well said. I agree with that. So talking a little bit more about your segment in particular, I was rewatching the film last night, which I would have done anyway, but I wanted to make sure it was fresh for our conversation. And something I liked about your segment is that Santa, he almost feels like a cartoon character in a way. He tends to like narrate what's going on. He kind of says what's happening out loud. I in particular, I like when he says, Krampus, vile enemy of Christmas.
Krampus, vile enemy of Christmas.
As if he just kind of like introducing his foe kind of before they fight. It has this kind of cartoon feeling, which I really like. Was this inspired by anything in particular, or where did this kind of sensibility come from?
You're asking me to go back, more than 10 years. But I think I certainly knew that if you're making a story about, Santa's elves turning into zombies, it's going to be funny.
Yeah.
So if it's going to be funny, this might be the one exception. If you took the horror out of this story, I don't know what you'd have left.
Yeah.
So the premise is so preposterous that it has to be. So to me, it kind of harkens, some movies that I feel, have inspired me, like Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2, where it's so over the top, you can get away with that almost kind of artificial sounding exposition where, Santa says, they become the Walking Dead, and you can get away with that stuff because no one's looking for Olivier here,
right,
or Pacino, and it's Santa after all, who is effectively a cartoon character to grown-ups.
Yes, that's a good point.
So and the elves themselves, played by real, I believe, do we use little people anymore?
I'm so not sure what the proper nomenclature is here, so I'm sure we'll forgive any misspeaking on our part here, but no, I know what you mean. Yeah,
to the point, actual actors, no CGI, no, and not all of them even actors, or I suppose they all have acting experience, but there's not as many opportunities, so they weren't all seasoned. And so Joe Silvaggio plays Jingles, actually, and he is not shiny, so he's not the first infected, but he just has more speaking roles, I think. And he also is the Changeling. So he was an actor who turns out, you can't tell the Changeling has got a lot of prosthetics going, but he was also played that role, which is more of a physicality thing.
I guess a question I have is, how much were you on set during the filming? Because it seemed like at least a little bit for your segment. Were you on set for any other segments?
Let me see if I can remember. No, I think I was mostly on set for my segment, and as well for the Krampus showdown, which my memory says, I think they shot that in a day and a half, which, by Hollywood standards is a lot. And they shot it in a real barn, and it was real cold. It was shot in winter. So it was a barn, they lit it up, but between takes, we were huddled in front of these space heaters because it was just a freezing cold day. So it's definitely there for that. And I think, all of the North Pole stuff was inside a studio, much more comfortable. So Santa's workshop is in a studio, and as I said, Steve Hoban, who's the principal at Copperheart as a producer, was also directing it. So I think he may have taken the liberty of directing a few more resources towards his segment, because the other ones take place in houses, and if you find a beautiful house, the Krampus story takes place in a beautiful house, but they didn't have to build beautiful rooms. There were beautiful rooms there. So yeah, I don't recall being on set for the other segments, but I might have seen some builds inside the studio.
Very cool. Well, if nothing else, I'm sure it was really cool to see what you wrote coming to life. That's got to be a crazy feeling, right? Like seeing something that came from your brain, and now all these people are like a part of the process of making it happen. And I'm sure that's something you've experienced across your writing career overall, not just on this film. So like, what is that feeling like? It's got to feel surreal, right?
Oh, it always feels surreal, but it also more often than not, making indie films anywhere, but my experience, many of these were made in Canada. It can take a long time. You write something, and 6 years later, they're finally shooting it, and the feeling is finally. But in this case, it just came together very quickly. I think that they pitched the concept to distributors and financiers while we were writing them. And by the time, we were finished finessing our segments, they were already starting to start pre-production, and we were cobbling them together and creating these connections. So it was a matter of months instead of years. So there's this great immediacy of, Santa takes his crozier and slices off the back of an elf's head. And then I arrive on set, and in the photo I sent you is, you see that elf with his brain exposed, but he's actually not performing. He's eating lunch with craft services across the table from Santa, who's covered in blood. And I think, all right, this is why I do this.
That's got to be so gratifying. Yeah.
It's very gratifying. And I remember the first feature film I ever wrote, I was like 23 years old, and it was called The Carpenter with Wings Hauser, which I was pleased to see that Vinegar Syndrome just kind of restored and released it recently.
Yeah, they do.
Exciting.
They do such great work
after 35 years.
Isn't that wild? Did you get to do any interviews or anything on that? Or?
Yes, the director and I got to do a commentary over the whole thing, and then they even made a little making of, which is us spinning anecdotes from 35 years ago.
That's so crazy. I love Vinegar Syndrome. Does great work. I'm a big proponent of physical media on this channel, and just getting to own the movies that we love. So awesome. So that's so cool for you.
Me too. So, but on The Carpenter, it was the same thing. This was like a low budget horror film during what they used to call the tax break exploitation film phase of Canadian film, which came out with, that's how a lot of the Cronenberg films were financed. There was a time where you got such a great tax break that these kind of mutual funds were being formed from dentists and anybody who wanted to maybe defer some of their revenue could invest in these movies that got on a 100% tax break. And there was some abuses of that, and they eventually shut it down. But for a short time, they were making films like, I think they made, what's the Bill Murray's, not Meatballs, but
it's not Stripes, is it?
I think it could have been Stripes. Ivan Reitman was Canadian.
Yeah.
And so the Cronenberg films and Porky's and
another Bob Clark film.
Yes.
Christmas Horror Story, or Christmas, Black Christmas. Excuse me. Yeah. Black Christmas.
And Black Christmas, another example. So anyway, on The Carpenter, I remember writing on like a Sunday, deciding, let's have an ending where the carpenter catches on fire and he's engulfed in flames. And then, like by the following Wednesday, I was watching them light a stuntman on fire, head to toe. And I thought, oh man, this is like performance art. It's so immediate. Something comes out of your head and then they light a man on fire. I thought that was amazing. And then, decades went by before I ever experienced anything like it again. And Christmas Horror Story had that same kind of immediacy of, that's what it's like. I think if you work more in television, which I don't do so much of, television of a series that already exists, is when you're writing it, it's going to go, it's going to be shot, when it's going to be shot. And that gives you a certain feedback loop. Who the actors are already. Whereas in feature films, you're just like alone in your head. You're writing it. You don't know if it's going to get made. You hope it will get made. Even if you've got a producer attached, you hope they can complete the financing, and you don't know who's going to be in it. So you have to imagine a version of these characters. So with Christmas Horror Story, the immediacy felt a little bit like maybe what it's like in Hollywood. If you're one of the fortunate few who can just pick their projects and know they're going to get made. If you just I think that when things sit on the shelf too long, by the time they get made, you don't even have the same connection as a writer to what you wrote 5 years ago. Even if you've been writing polishes along the way, there's a fatigue that sets in, and maybe it could possibly be a detriment to the momentum of the writing. And so with Darknet and Christmas Horror Story, it was just it all happened so fast, and I think they're both very energetic because of it.
Yeah, like you said, there's this feeling of immediacy, and I've heard from interviews and things like that, like there's there's so little certainty, like you're alluding to, like everything might seem like it's going full steam ahead, and then you know but it's never officially, you can never really breathe a sigh of relief until things are filming, and then even at that point, things that are filming have gone on to not happen. Like there's this Batgirl movie that just got completely shelved, and so like that's got to be an awful feeling. So it's there really is so little certainty for people in your profession, it seems like. So to be able to have something like that, it's got to feel good.
Yeah, it feels great, and I think it helps with the main product, the final product, to know that it's getting made and that you have a timeline, and you can't sit on your hands. You have to get it right as you can, and not maybe sometimes you can overwrite or over perfect. You think you're perfecting it, but you're actually over finessing it, and not so in this case.
Very cool. Well, I think we're coming towards the end of our conversation here. So the last thing I want to ask you is, what are some of your favorite Christmas horror films? Maybe a top 3, or you can just throw one at me. It's whatever you want to do.
I really have a soft spot for Black Christmas. And by the way, there was a remake also done by Copperheart that I quite liked. And there's just some really good kills. I love Gremlins, if that qualifies.
I think it does.
A little bit on the fringe, but Christmas, it felt like part of it.
Big time.
It felt integrated, not just set.
Right. Because Gizmo is like a gift.
Yes, exactly.
So it does feel very, I would say so, for sure.
I'll let those two lay. Those are strong.
Enough
in their way.
You can't really do too much better than those. I didn't realize that the remake, you're talking about the 2006 one, right?
Yes.
That's cool. I didn't realize that was also Copperheart. That's very cool.
Yeah. So they have a real connection to the pedigree of Canadian horror.
Yeah, that's, I think Black Christmas is, it's celebrated, but I think it really should get a lot of the flowers that Halloween does. Just as far as the things that it did, innovating on like the final girl trope, and even the POV stuff. Black Christmas did all of that, kind of before Halloween. So
I don't know if I can't remember the original as clearly as I remember the remake, so I don't know if this element pre-existed, but there's a death by icicle in the eye socket.
Yeah,
that kind of thrilled me, because this is what we try to do, right?
Yeah.
What it feels Christmassy that we haven't seen before. Oh, I never really thought of icicles as a lethal weapon, but how perfect for this horror movie, and how perfect for the season, especially if you're Canadian. We have a strong relationship to our frozenness.
Well, that is great to hear that you seem to love Black Christmas as much as I do. So, and it was really a treat to get to sit down and talk with you about A Christmas Horror Story. It's a movie that I don't want to proselytize too much, I guess, but that is kind of what we're here to do. So yeah, it's a great movie. I encourage anyone watching, if they haven't, go seek it out. It's great for this time of year. So just want to thank you for your time, and really appreciate it, man.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a pleasure to talk about a movie I had so much pleasure being a part of, and also just knowing that people like you are keeping these movies in people under the microscope, and also bringing them to the attention of people who don't know about them we're very grateful to that.
Of course. Well, I'm happy to be a part of it in any small way that I can be. So, all right. Well, that's going to do it for us, guys. Everyone out there, have a happy, safe holiday season, and take care and watch more movies, guys.
So here's to the season. Here's to you, Bailey Downs.
All right, guys. Welcome back to the shelf. Today, I am joined by Mr. Grant Harvey. How you doing today?
Great, man. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I would just first off the top, I want to thank you for your time and being willing to sit down with me so close to Christmas. Although it is kind of appropriate given the
It
subject
is.
matter.
Yes. Well done.
Yes, I'm just glad it was able to work out. So thank you very much again. And yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, you are one of the directors on A Christmas Horror Story from 2015, and that's my first question is just how does it feel knowing that this movie is 10 years old now? What is that like?
It feels like I'm getting really old because it doesn't seem like that long ago. Yeah, no, I actually didn't even think about it until you reached out. I was like, holy shit, it is 10 years. That's crazy. Yeah, and I mean it's even longer since we shot it. So yeah.
Right, because you guys had to sit on it.
Yeah,
sorry.
we sat on it. Yeah, no, we sat on it for a bit. Like, so yeah, but it was a really awesome, fun thing to do. It's a very fond memory for me for sure. Because it was a bunch of friends that just put it together.
Yeah, so when I had reached out to you about potentially doing this interview, I also was able to get in touch with one of the writers, Doug Taylor, and I got to sit down with him as well about a week ago, and we got to talk. And he says hello as well. He wanted me to tell you hello because I mentioned that I was going to get to talk with you. And yeah, so I guess my next question is just how has your relationship kind of changed with the movie, if at all, just over the years? You know, kind of seeing how it's kind of garnered something of a cult status.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, you make these things like I shoot a lot of episodic television as well, and you make these things and you kind of put your heart and soul into them, and then you finish them and you release them to the world, and after that you don't really have a lot of say, so you tend to kind of also release yourself from them a little bit, because after that it's kind of, you know, it takes on a life of its own or it doesn't. So I actually, you know, I don't really have a close relationship with it anymore. But it made me very happy because when Steve Hoban came up with the idea and Mark Smith, like we all thought, oh man, this is great. And this could, you know, we could do sequels, and, you know, it could be a really fun thing, and it's evergreen because it'll play every Christmas and all of those things. And it did take a little bit for it to kind of catch on. But when it did, it was just super fun and super, like, that's kind of why we did it. We figured it would be something that could kind of last, you know? So yeah, it's not like I have a real strong relationship with it anymore, but it makes me smile when people bring it up, and you know, and I try to watch it with my, I make my kids watch it every Christmas, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I know I watch it every year. It's sort of a comfort movie for me at this point.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's you know, I first discovered it on Netflix, and you know, I wasn't really sure what to expect, but it, you know, I thought it looked like a fun time, and really impressed with it. And I was like, this is like a thing I can see myself watching multiple times.
It's scrappy, you know, like we had very little money. I think it was $3 million maybe, Canadian. So that's like $1.50 from where you're from.
Right.
And so, but it was, yeah, it was just, it really, I'm from Calgary originally. I live in Toronto now, but so I went to film school in Calgary. I went with John Fawcett, who directed Ginger Snaps, and we're really good friends. And, but we started out just kind of shooting stuff out of the back of a cube van and kind of making it up, because we were in Calgary, we weren't in Los Angeles or even Toronto. So I've always had kind of a scrappy indie, maverick kind of vibe, and this film kind of spun out of Steve Hoban and his company Copperheart. Did a sort of micro budget series called Darknet. I forget where it played, but and when they finished that, because I had always been touting this revolution of smaller crew and indie, let's go out and do something, and that's kind of how they shot that series. And I believe Vincenzo Natali was involved as well. And after that finished, Steve really enjoyed the experience, and he had an idea about doing a Christmas horror anthology. So he went down to AFM he printed up some Christmas cards that just said a Christmas horror story with a tree with, I don't know if it had an axe in it or whatever, blood dripping off it or whatever. And he went down to AFM and he sold it like that. And so he phoned Telefilm, got a little money from them. And that would have been in September, October. And we shot it in January, February, like the next. So he pulled in the writers that had worked on Darknet, because he knew they could write it fast, and assigned a different writer to each of the stories in the anthology, and phoned me up and said, "Hey, would you like to direct a couple? We're bringing some friends in to make this little movie." And yeah, so it all happened very fast, which is not the norm. Like normally you're developing stuff for years. So it was super fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my next question, was just sort of how did you get attached on the film? And yeah, that's really like you said, that's not something that ever happens really, is sort of this idea of, the conception to filming. Usually it seems like creatives are kind of having to sit on things for a really long time, because it feels like the floor could fall out at any point, and like you might think you have the green light, and then it kind of falls apart.
That's exactly it, Mark. Like Steve was, he'd been producing for a long time and had many projects in development that had fallen through and took forever. And so he was just like, this is all about momentum. Like we're going to write this and we're going to shoot it. And Lionsgate got on board. And like I say, he phoned me probably late November and said, we're going to go into prep in January. Are you in? You're in or you're out? And I was like, I'm in, let's go. And it was very scrappy. Like I think the sets, they were existing sets. Our production manager had just finished a series, so he talked them into letting us use the sets, like rent the sets for a little bit before they tore them down. It was a pretty small crew, very hands-on, and yeah, a lot of fun. Luckily that winter in Toronto, we had lots of snow, because normally we wouldn't have that much snow. So yeah, everything sort of, the film gods kind of shone on us for, I think, being, having the momentum and just giving her. And it was super fun because it was just a bunch of guys that are all friends putting it together. And I got to meet some great, I got to meet Doug, and Pascal Trottier is a writer and filmmaker that I still work with. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
And so remind me, you directed the Changeling segment?
Yeah, and the Krampus one. Yeah.
And the Krampus one, right. So my next question is just sort of, when you're directing on an anthology where there's multiple directors, I know you said it's very scrappy and like momentum was kind of the essence. Was there any time to kind of collaborate with the other directors to kind of attempt to create sort of a seamless tone, or do you just kind of have to just go?
I mean, yes and no. Like, yes, because Brett Sullivan, who directed I forget what they called the ghosty one, the kids in the locked in the school, and then Steve Hoban, who produced, decided we were like, you should direct the Santa segment. So we were, and Brett edited the film. Steve was producing the film and helped writing the film. And we're all good friends. So we definitely had time in prep to sort of talk. But I mean, the concept was each story in the anthology would be a subgenre of horror. So we embraced the idea that each and it had one cinematographer through the whole thing. So that helped a little bit with the blue, but we did embrace the notion that each of the subgenres of should feel like it lives in that subgenre, not necessarily feel like it lives in the whole thing. And then I actually think, I can't remember if the segments, I think originally were going to play as individual segments, and I think it was in post that we decided to intercut them. Yeah, I think so. And I'm really happy with that choice. I know I had left and was on a job or was away on holiday or something, and they were cutting it, and I came and saw it, and just as fresh eyes, I realized that they were cutting it to the script. Geez, Mark, I can't remember if we were scripted like that or if that was a post decision to sort of break them up. It feels like it was a post decision, but I remember it wasn't really working. So we kind of got the blackboard out and figured out that we needed to sort of intercut where each story was, like tempo wise and beat wise, more so than kind of intellectually where it was scripted. And then it really started to flow and we were like, oh yeah, we're on the right track. And the other thing too, remind me, is the Santa story told backwards? I don't think so, right?
So it starts out with him like about to face off with Krampus, and then it kind of,
and then it rewinds, right?
And then from there it kind of plays
right, because in the script it was backwards.
Yes.
And we tried that, and it wasn't working. Like we were trying to jam a square peg into a round hole, and I was, again, I had fresh eyes, and I can't remember if, I'm pretty sure I was involved in the decision to abandon that. And it actually still worked. Like Steve, who directed that segment, had designed it to flow backwards. So there was some trouble with some of the transitions. We had to, figure that out. But again, it was like the whole group of us kind of editing it. So it was super fun. Like there was zero ego. I could give notes on Brett's segment. Brett was editing, so he was giving notes on my segments. Yeah, it was super fun, man. I would love to do something like that again. It was a blast. I highly recommend.
That's really nice when you're working with people and you don't have to worry about stepping on toes or anything, and you can give your unfiltered feedback, and it's not going to be taken personally because it's all for like the betterment of the end result, which is hopefully what everyone's working towards.
One would hope, Mark.
Yeah.
One would hope. It's a little more rare than you might think, unfortunately.
Yeah, I could see that. That's cool though.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know, not to dig too deep personally here, but it is something that has caught me up a lot in episodic television. There's a lot of shows I haven't been invited back to because I grew up in kind of a collective in Calgary. There was a collective of us that would make stuff, and we'd help each other make stuff, and and give each other notes all the time. And then same with when anything I did with Copperheart, like the Ginger Snaps films, or our Christmas Horror Story, there's no ego. Like we would just, including Mark Smith, who was a more junior producer at that time. He had a seat at the table as well. And everyone collaborated and felt safe to speak their truth and mind. And when you take that to some episodic series, sometimes the showrunners, even though they might say, yeah, what are you thinking? They don't want to hear it. So yeah, it's a pretty freaking great way to work. Yeah, I would love to do it again. Yeah, I
would love.
And I think sorry to interrupt, but I think it comes through in the fun aspect of A Christmas Horror Story. That's because we had fun. Sorry to interrupt.
No, please. Well, I was just going to say I had previously interviewed a gentleman named Dwight H. Little, who directed Halloween 4, among a lot of other things. And he also was able to kind of, because later in his career, he went on to work on shows like Bones and The X-Files, and a lot of stuff like that. And he shared a similar sentiment. So yeah, it seems to be that's kind of the case where the showrunners are kind of the director capacity kind of thing.
Yeah, no, for sure.
But
there's lots of good ones. Even the ones that don't want to hear your notes, there's lots of good ones. It's just a hard thing to navigate. That's all. Because I mean, I have plenty of ego, but I try to aim that ego at the film, not at myself. Yeah.
Right. No, that's a good way to do it, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And something you said about the fun of this movie is so it's so spot on because despite all the different tones, because like
Hmm.
the segment in the basement is very creepy and very eerie,
Yeah.
and the tone of the changeling story is there's a lot of like trauma and like PTSD going on in there, but like
Yeah.
somehow it still manages to be fun. And I just think that's a real testament to the quality of this film. And you also mentioned something about the different subgenres where you have like a possession ghost story, and you have
Hmm.
like the Krampus segment's almost like a slasher where he's like stalking this family in the woods and
Yeah.
everything. And the Santa in the North Pole segment is like a splatter film. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
it's a real seamless blend of all of these different sort of subgenres, like you said.
Yeah. It's interesting because I'm, you know, I like tone is everything, and y- bringing up my friend John Fawcett again, who did Ginger Snaps and Orphan Black, like he is a genius, and Steve is as well, a genius at being really irreverent with tone. Like you're laughing your guts out 1 second, and then flip it, and you're like horrified or super sad or whatever. Like he's really great at that, and I try to be I try to follow, they're so good at it. It's almost intimidating, but it's interesting because I felt like when I first read it, I thought the Krampus segment was a little too far outside the zone. It was really like the rest of all of it felt grounded enough that it felt like it lived in a world and felt grounded, which I think was important for it, for us to have some scares. Um, and that one was really like almost a comedy. Like it was very out there. And I actually, you know, I actually recommended pulling that back a little bit. I know I know the writer was a little pissed at times because there was some pretty funny jokes that we cut out. But it felt like once we saw it as a whole, it did it did stick out too much. Like it kind of broke you out of the world. And I think that's one of the things that's super fun and cool about Christmas Horror Story is like we set it in Bailey Downs, which you may know from Ginger Snaps. And it was meant to, and all the stories were interconnected. The people, the cop from the Changeling was the cop that discovered the kids in the basement, and all of these things were interconnected. So so yeah, it was interesting that you brought that up because the Krampus story tonally felt like it was just outside the line. So we pulled it in a little bit, and I think it fits now. Like even though it's kind of the most fantastical and definitely has humor with the family, but yeah, but super fun balancing that, like really fun balancing that. Yeah. Ah,
Yeah,
you're making me all nostalgic, man. This is great.
dude. Well, I'm glad that you share my enthusiasm for this movie because, like I just love it so much, and it does seem to me to be like the equivalent of the film Trick or Treat, as far as like
Yeah.
quality goes, because that's a film that I see, praised all the time, Halloween, and I'm like, where are you guys at for Christmas Horror Story? Like, it's right up there, like as far as
Yeah.
tone
Thanks, man. Yeah.
and quality. Like, I really think it deserves more flowers, so that's why I wanted
Oh,
to kind of
thanks.
to do this. No, for
Yeah,
sure.
that's awesome. And that film was definitely, I mean, this was pulled right from that concept, is well, let's make another holiday horror, and Christmas is fun. Like we were all fans of Bob Clark's Black Christmas. Like, yeah, that scared the shit out of me when I was little,
Yeah,
and not that little, but younger. And Steve Hoban actually did the remake of that.
yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, and we were kind of hoping. I'll be honest, like we were really disappointed. Lionsgate kind of just they didn't. They believed in it to get it going, but when we delivered it, they just kind of felt like it was a programmer that they could dump into Walmart, and it really bummed us out because we felt like we could have, And I think we've kind of proven now with making the lists and with people like you that it could have had a longer like we could have had more, you know. But that's like I said right at the top, you make it and you set it
Put
to the
it out
wind,
there, and yeah.
and then you don't get too you can't get too wound up about it because it's beyond your control mostly.
Yeah, that's a bummer, but yeah, like you said, you know, these things tend to live a second and a third life, you know, with fans who really appreciate these sort of things. So,
Yeah.
um,
And
yeah, so I
I'm not like a super like horror fan, you know, like I'm looking in at your posters and stuff in the background, and I, you know, I love it. Like I'm definitely I definitely enjoy, like Pascal, my buddy that wrote The Changeling, is he watches every horror film that comes out, and you know, and I actually feel like a little bit of an imposter because I watch all sorts of stuff, and horrors being one of them, but I'm not like a super fan. So I always get a little nervous talking to guys like you because I'm like, oof, I feel like I got
oh no,
imposter syndrome.
no, everyone's like a film fan, but it's like,
Yeah,
you know, there's always gonna be stuff that I haven't seen that you've seen. It's, you know, it's
yeah,
like I have this conversation with my buddy all the time. Him and I do like these live streams every now and then where you know, we'll talk about films, and like he loves horror films, but there are some that he just hasn't seen. I recently made him watch the first Black 74
yeah,
Black Christmas. So he had never seen it, and him and I did a whole conversation about it. And you know, he says the same thing that you do, where he's like, he'll address the chat and be like, I'm a fake fan or whatever. And I'm like, no,
yeah,
it's, you know, you just kind of missed it. You know, it's like it's a
yeah,
film
yeah,
from 50 years ago, so there's no
yeah,
shame in having, you know, not seen some of these
yeah,
deeper cuts.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but yeah, I guess so. We had kind of addressed this already a little bit, but like, what is it about this movie that you think has kind of allowed it to garner this cult status? Is it just the sheer scrappiness of it that you guys injected
I
into it, or
I I think it's the scrappiness of it that you can feel, like the fact that we kind of were like, "Fuck this, we're making this." I think people feel that. I firmly believe that, like, I've worked on TV shows where it wasn't really anyone's baby, and you're
Mm,
like, this is not gonna make it, because I think that's what transmits through the screen is your love for it, or your passion for it, or your need to tell it, or your friendship with your buddies making it, that it transmits, man. Like, you feel that, you know. And so yeah, I think that's part of it. I think the fact, so we brought in a buddy of mine, Jason Filiatro, uncredited, to write the jokes for William Shatner, and he just killed it. Like, it comes across like improv, a lot of it, but it actually was all scripted. And I actually think the Shatner bits and the comedy is another reason that it is very charming, and I think gives it some staying power, because it is like, you can tell we were all, you know, watching this. Our formative years for the group of us was the 80s, like late 70s and 80s, and Creepshow is a huge film for all of us, you know. So, and you can definitely feel Creepshow all over this film, you know. And it's that combination of, like, some of it's with a wink, some of it's leaning into some tropes, but going, you know, yeah, we know it's a trope, but we fucking love it. Who cares? You
yeah.
know, some of it is scary, some of it's funny, you know. So I think all of that also, like, I think if it was just pure horror, I don't know that it would be as evergreen as it is. I think it's some of the other aspects of it that make it kind of like, you know what, this is a fun film, I'm going to watch it again. Yeah, I think so. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I want to talk about the Shatner stuff, because he really brings, like, every great horror anthology has like a really great wraparound host.
Hmm.
You know, in the 70s and 80s and stuff, you had, like, you know, Peter Cushing and Vincent Price,
Yeah.
you know, and you know, Bela Lugosi, and like I'm thinking of there's like a 70s Black Sabbath, which is like a Mario Bava like Italian horror anthology. So it's just these iconic guys, and William Shatner is iconic. So the
Yeah.
fact that you guys have him here, and it's so like that radio station just feels so cozy,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
it really comes across. And
Shatner getting drunk. Yeah.
he's trying his best to keep a positive attitude, and like
Yeah. Yeah.
things throughout the film just kind of progressively are getting worse, and he's still trying to
He's
maintain that.
trying. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's just so fun to watch. And you know, his humor, his banter with, I think there's a Janet or something that he's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like going back and forth with, and then Storm and Norman is there,
Yeah.
and he's like the only one who seems to care about Christmas. And like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it's kind of like a thing where that you run into where you're like upset sometimes when you come back to the wraparound, because you're like, oh, we were
Right.
just getting to the good stuff. But I never was I always enjoyed coming
Mhm.
back to that radio station to see what Shatner was up to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
No, I
just
agree.
I really enjoyed that about the movie as well. And I feel like I was gonna
I
say something, but go ahead.
Oh no, I just yeah, that's cool. Like and we didn't have, I don't think we had Shatner in mind off the hop. Like we knew we were gonna have that wraparound, but uh and I forget how it was, I think Steve landed on him, and Steve actually jetted down. They shot that in LA. Like they just wheeled him out of his house and into a little makeshift studio and fed him his lines. Yeah, he was very cool, very gracious, and really fun, you know, and got it. Like that's the thing. Like there's a good chance he couldn't, maybe wouldn't get it, you know, but he totally got it. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's really fun. And like I say, my friend Jason just nailed it with the jokes. But I
Yeah.
think so. Okay, here I'm asking you all these questions now.
Please.
So our choice to sort of edit it more Love Boat style rather than like Creepshow story, do you think it was a good choice?
So yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about as well. Is I think it works really well because it's something that not a lot of horror anthologies do, and it helps set it apart for that reason. But it also makes it so that you kind of have this gradual building of like narrative momentum that you would find in a normal, like structural, like a normal narrative.
Yeah.
And then in the third act, all the stories are kind of wrapping up at once. So it's just kind of like a bang,
Yeah.
bang, bang. And
Yeah.
I think that really, really works. And not only that, but I love like the inserts of like, you'll see the kids in their car driving to the school, and then the camera like pans over and you see Scott Peters and his family
Yep.
going in to get the tree. So there's like, through the cinematic language, I guess you can tell that all these things are happening at the same time.
Mhm.
And that just makes it feel more lived in, like this town
Yeah.
feels real.
Oh, that's
So
great. Yeah,
all that
that's great.
all that stuff works for me. I really like it personally. I know some people don't, but I
Yeah.
it never stood out to me as being like distracting, or it just felt natural to me.
That's great. And that was the hard part. And that's why, like, I had the advantage of fresh eyes. I came into the edit and they were kind of struggling with the intercutting and you know, even toying with the idea of not doing that. And I realized, and you nailed it, like what I realized was they were kind of cutting it they were cutting it more based on, I think, time of day, or I can't remember, but I realized that no, we got to have each segment, you know, we got to see all of their setups, then we got to see all the first acts, then we got to see all the second acts, then we got to see all the third acts, because it was kind of a little more mixed and matched, and it just kind of deflated the entire like if we were going to intercut instead of have story, it had to emotionally and like action wise, we had to have all the stories in the same place. So when we kind of did that and rebeat it out, we were like, okay, this story now is at this point. Now, where is that in all the other ones? And it wasn't the same as the script. So we had to rejumble it a little bit. And then once we did that, and especially like you say, the third act, once all the climaxes were kind of lined up, I thought we were like, okay, now we got this. Yeah.
No, I agree 100%. And especially with the twist
Mhm.
of the North Pole segment, which we haven't really talked
Yeah.
about yet. Which like for as much as Shatner, I think makes the movie. I mean, everything works so well in this movie, but I think that twist really makes this movie, and it recontextualizes like everything.
Yeah, you
that-
kind of whoa, you go back. Yeah.
yeah, and you're like, because everything about the North Pole segment feels a little like clearly this is not happening in Bailey Downs.
Yeah, yeah.
There's
And
something.
why is there Santa for real? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's a little out there, and then when you watch it, you're like, oh, like,
Yeah.
and man, it's just such a great twist, and it's like, oh, this is actually really clever.
Mhm.
Because something that I really admire about movies with a twist ending like that is where it makes sense, and if you watch it back, there's no like, there's nothing. They never like cheated in order to
Mhm.
make their twist work. This is something that Doug Taylor commented on as well. I don't think he wrote that part. Well, no,
He did, I think.
he did.
Yeah. And
He did.
remind me, because I can't remember, was it Key or Taylor that wrote Krampus? Do you remember? Because I didn't really get to work with the writers.
I think
They
it
were
was
kind of
it was James Key. I think he
Key, I
wrote.
think.
Yeah.
Krampus,
So
yeah.
I got them mixed up because they both have Krampus. My apologies.
Yeah.
Doug Taylor absolutely wrote the North Pole segment.
That's
and,
James Key wrote
yeah. So just that whole.
But no, I agree. Like,
Yeah.
And it was really fun. We went to a few festivals with the film, and watching the audience, like, it was so satisfying when that reveal comes, and watching the audience just like going, "What the? Oh my god!" But it's fantastic. It works really, really well.
Yeah, because the actor who plays Stormin' Norman is the same who plays Santa, and
Yeah.
they look different. But
Yeah.
so that's what I mean by when you go back and you can kind of see Stormin' Norman's like decline. He's like got the sign that says "Fuck Christmas."
Yeah.
So there's subtle clues, and although you might not be able to predict it 100%, when you do think back, you're like, okay, everything checks out. Like there was no nothing.
Yeah,
here that
I
was
think
out
we
of-
talked that actor into shaving his beard.
Oh yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah, but we were worried that people were gonna figure that out too quick, but it didn't seem like anyone has. So.
No, it feels like you gave him just enough to
Mhm.
establish that guy as being kind of pissed off,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
and just kind of establishing that he's there, and then
Yeah.
if you look close enough, maybe you could be able, because Storm Norton, he's got like maybe a couple shots
Yeah.
throughout the whole
And
thing.
I think it's through the glass, or
yeah. So it's very kind of, it's very much
Mhm.
there, but not at the same
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
I mean, this is just an example of I can think of just everything working in tandem, and like nothing was like there's no weak link in this movie, in my opinion.
Oh, that's great, man. Thanks. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I think because we were all helping each other out, that also helped, like, that nothing sort of there was no weak link, because everyone was helping out. So yeah, there was actually another segment for quite a while, but we realized we just didn't have the time and money to do it, and realized that we would have the screen time without it, but it was kind of a drag. It was and that one was like the subgenre of like like kind of a slasher, Texas Chainsaw style.
Okay, cool.
But and yeah, it was what's the name of the filmmaker? He was really gracious when we said we couldn't. Steve had worked with him on, he wrote Wolves and directed Wolves. David Hayter. But yeah, that was a bit of a bummer. But we were like, oh no, dude, this is going to get a sequel. Yours will be in the sequel.
Man, if I just had unlimited money and I could like get all you guys back to get the band back together for a sequel to this movie, that would be something, man.
It'd be super fun, and you'd be invited, man. You come up and hang out.
Well, I would love nothing more. That would be so cool. So take me like onto the set, as a director, what were some of the challenges that you ran into? Because, I know you said it was limited budget. Obviously you had directed before, but so just what were some of the maybe some things that you didn't foresee that you ran into that were kind of obstacles?
Well, I mean, definitely. I mean, I'm used to working with lower budgets. I'm used to working with TV schedules. But what I didn't want it to be was feel too TV. So, and I think we decided in prep, the one way to make it not feel too TV, quote unquote. Not that, I mean, and 10 years ago, TV was a little more TV. Now TV is more feature film.
Very cinematic, yeah.
Yeah. So we just, and Steve really, as our producer, like our main producer, really encouraged us to make choices and not overcover things. Like I said, okay, well, I think the TV series Luther had just come out, and I really enjoyed the way the compositions in Luther. Like I felt like that kind of uncomfortable compositions, but not a lot of camera moves, would be a really cool thing for the Changeling. And Steve was like, yeah, go for it. So we shot that very, it's kind of almost tableau-y in once we get into their apartment. And
Yeah.
there's not, the coverage is not real matchy, and because I thought, once they bring their kid home, once they lose their kid and bring the kid home, things should feel like I was like, okay, point of view. Okay, we're going to be in the point of view at first of the dad, and then at a certain point we'll flip to the point of view of the mom. And and so, I wanted everything to feel off base, like not something's not right. And then with the Krampus one, we were like, okay, well, this is the most sort of, kind of monster movie, Hollywood kind of thing. So we tried to, incorporate, not that we had cranes very much or anything, but just kind of make that feel a little more Spielbergy, like I wanted to feel a little bit more in that vein. And I know Brett, studied quite a bit of, the Blumhouse stuff for the segment with the kids in the basement, and, and just sort of how that felt really gritty. So one of the ways that we battled the limited budget was just being really like bringing some authorship to how we shot it. Like Steve and the company and even Lionsgate, who were very hands off, which was great. Nobody was saying, make sure you get this close up or make sure you cover it this way, which helps a lot, because sometimes, when you're doing television, they want you to shoot everything so they can build it in the editing suite. And in this, we were encouraged to bring a voice to it. So that helped. But yeah, definitely the challenges were certainly working with the kids. Like I enjoy that, but it does take time. And when you don't have a lot of money, time is pretty valuable. So that was challenging. I'm glad I had those segments with the little guys, because I had done quite a bit of work with kids. Yeah, there was just some frustration at times with like some of the sets. Our department did a great job for what they had, but sometimes I'd be like, oh, this feels a little like a set, but yeah, mostly it was, quite enjoyable. We had to fly, like we didn't have a lot of shooting days. But yeah, no, I don't really have a lot of memory of being pissed off or sad about stuff. It was all pretty joyous, pretty fun.
That's something that I feel like perhaps is an accidental byproduct of having to really go and the limited amount of money is like, obviously you're all very like the material is sound, and so I feel like once that's good, as long as you have some really talented people to execute it, and the other thing is just to not linger with it and like over,
yep,
and just kind of
deadly. It's deadly.
Trying to maybe just just be like, no, it's good the way it is, and then like let's just like trust your gut kind of thing.
Trust your gut. Like I'm not a smart man, but I got good guts and I got a good heart. Like I can operate with those two organs. And I agree, and I think that's part of what screws up a lot of films and TV in Canada, especially. Like we have a very enviable system here where there is government money to develop and shoot things, but they force you to go through this process, and a lot of times, like you said, you overthink things because you're forced to go through all these different steps, and rewrite and rethink, and I think honestly it squeezes the juice right out of things, like at times, and this was so fast that we were all operating from our guts and our hearts. And Steve's a very smart guy, so he looked after the brains part, as far as like, making sure the twist worked and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm glad you noticed that, because it is something I 100% agree. I think overthinking things is a big mistake. Like you had an instinct at the beginning for a reason. You gotta protect that. Yeah.
Yeah, Doug Taylor had kind of helped give me a little bit of that perspective as well. So I can't take all the credit for the insights there, but no, I do think that it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, I guess as we're kind of coming to the end of our conversation here, I guess I just want to pick your brain. What are maybe some of your favorite other Christmas horror movies that we could shine a light on?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay, so I was thinking about this a little bit, and definitely, I mean, Black Christmas, the one you're wearing,
For sure.
it's funny because when I'm gonna rewatch that actually this Christmas,
You
because
should. It's great.
yeah, I haven't seen it in a long time, and yeah, and then I saw, because a bunch of friends worked on Santa's sleigh in Edmonton, so I remember watching that and getting a bit of a laugh out of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty fun.
I haven't seen that one. That's from like 2005, right?
Yeah,
Around then.
Yeah, because I think we had just finished shooting Ginger Snaps sequels up there, and they rolled into that, so it'd be right around then.
Okay.
And it's kind of a goof, like it's it's fun.
Yeah, it is, not to be taken terribly seriously.
Yes, correct.
But those are great. We need
yeah.
movies like those.
Yeah, that's what I think, and I think that's part of what makes Christmas Horror Story kind of fun too, is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. And then this is not obviously a Christmas movie, but it's got lots of snow, and it's
those count. Those definitely count.
Yeah. So I mean, the Thing. I mean, that's ultimately my favorite. Yeah.
Great choice.
It's one. That's a film that definitely, because I got into film, like my origin story was a little bit the Star Wars thing, but more like what really made me want to tell stories on film was more like the John Hughes films, like Breakfast Club and or things like Back to the Future, and kind of coming of age stuff really was what got me into it. And then I saw that my friend who would make monsters and shit in his basement, his parents' basement, was like, "Oh man, you gotta watch The Thing." And I think we got a VHS of it somehow, and I was just like, what are you talking about? This is so awesome. So, and that's when I was like, let's make monsters and all that stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna put that one, just because it has snow in it. I'm gonna put that one as my favorite Christmas movie.
Yeah, that's a great choice. Movies like that and like The Shining.
Yeah, The Shining. There's another one. Yeah. Let's officially,
Misery.
Mark, let's officially make those three films Christmas movies. What do you say? They made Die Hard into a Christmas movie. Well, let's make those into Christmas movies.
I think it works. I think it's a perfectly suitable Christmas movie to watch with the whole family.
Indeed.
Yeah, for sure. And then couple more here. Just what's a non-horror Christmas movie? One you like to watch with the whole family.
With the whole family.
Not The Thing.
Well, weirdly, even before Die Hard became a Christmas movie, that was one that we would watch as a Christmas movie.
Cool.
And I like the, what is a big hit with our family, and we'll probably watch it again this year, is Love Actually. Speaking of anthologies, that one works for me. And then I'm trying to remember, was it Scrooged? There was something that,
with Bill Murray.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember watching that a few times and thinking that was pretty great. But yeah, I would say those would be those would be my Christmas go-tos. Definitely, because I have sons, so Die Hard became a Christmas tradition for sure. Yeah.
Cool. And then I guess my last one that I kind of thought of, on the fly. What is it about you Canadians that makes you so well suited to make great Christmas horror films? Because Bob
It's
Clark,
fucking cold up here, dude.
that was my my hunch, but I wanted to get some confirmation on that.
I think, I've been thinking about this a lot because I just came to Calgary for Christmas, and driving across, like, it took me my last leg. I was going to do it in 4 days driving because I have dogs, and I drew the short straw to drive the dogs here, and my last leg, it was supposed to be 4 days, but there was a blizzard coming. So my brother was like, dude, you better make a go for it so I did it in 3 days. And my last leg was from Kenora, Ontario to Calgary, which was 18 hours.
Jeez.
It's huge. This country is huge. And there is not a lot of things between, it's just snow and trees and grass. And you realize, like, we, as Canadians, we kind of, like, this morning it was minus, I don't know what it would be the equivalent in Fahrenheit, but it was like minus 24 outside. I put the dogs out and they lasted like 30 seconds. And I was like, if I went out there in my pajamas, I would last maybe 5 minutes in the city. Like, I would die in my backyard. And I think that informs that kind of the isolation, but also just the fact that nature could kill you instantly if you're not smart about it, I think informs a bit of our mentality, and maybe brings out a little bit of that dark side. But yeah.
No, that's a great answer. I had kind of theorized something similar as well. So yeah, no, that's great stuff, man.
Cool. Where are you? You're in New Jersey?
New Jersey. So yeah, we had snow for like 2 days, and then the rain came, and it's all gone now. So
yeah,
hopefully we get some more.
Yeah, I hope you have a white Christmas. What are you going to watch this year?
I've been working my way through. I watched like Elf last night. I watched Jingle All the Way.
There you go. Yeah, Elf,
yeah. I like to mix a lot of the horror with non-horror, sort of like a palate cleanser. I did a Silent Night, Deadly Night. The original, which is a lot of fun.
That is fun. Yeah,
I saw the new one. It was okay. I didn't really go for it. I didn't like. Maybe I was a little harsh on it. I wasn't too crazy on it. I think, like, we have a predisposition with like newer movies that are kind of trying to ape an 80s kind of campiness that I'm like, it just doesn't. I don't know, something about being like a contemporary film trying to kind of match that sort of 80s cheese.
Right.
There's something gets a little lost in translation.
The cheese cannot be faked. The cheese has to be real.
Yeah. And so, I know maybe I was a little harsh on that one, but it was fine. It was okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to rewatch the 06 Black Christmas, but it's a little harder to get your hands on. It's not really. Yeah. Well, I like to have physical copies of everything, and I need to track down a DVD of that.
Yeah, I know Steve was a little disappointed in the end, and definitely disappointed with the release. Like, I think it was that Miramax or Weinstein Company, maybe. But they released it on Christmas Day, and Steve was like, "What? Like, no. After Christmas, no one's interested in Christmas. It should
you gotta like
December
a couple
1st.
Weeks.
Yeah. So that one kind of, and I don't know if he, like, I think he's proud of it, but there was a lot of chefs in that kitchen. So that was another reason he wanted to do Christmas Horror Story, is to like kick the chefs out of the kitchen, invite his friends to the kitchen, and let's make a stew. Yeah. Have you seen the original Ginger Snaps?
I've seen the first one, but I haven't seen the other ones because I know there's like 3 of them, right?
Yeah. I directed the second unit. I'm really good friends with. That's how I met Steve, was through John Fawcett. Wrote and directed Ginger Snaps, and then Steve produced it. And yeah, and then I worked on the sequels as well. I directed the third one, and yeah, so it's pretty fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, Doug Taylor mentioned that to me, that they were set in the same town, and I was like mind blown. I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh shit, it is the same town."
yeah. I
So that
think
was a
there's
cool
even
revelation.
there's even I think there's even other. There might be other films where Bailey Downs is anything that Steve. It's kind of like the John Hughes thing. I forget what town
Yeah,
he invented, but yeah,
or
Steve.
like Castle Rock with
Yeah,
Stephen King
yeah,
or something.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, there's I think there's maybe even in the Tall Grass has a reference to Bailey Down. I don't know. There's a few of them for sure.
That's awesome, man. Well,
Yeah,
thank you so much for being so generous with your time with me on this
yeah,
Saturday morning here. I know you're
no
doing your
problem.
holiday thing, so
Awesome.
yeah,
Well, no,
really
that
really
was a lot of
appreciate it.
fun, man. Very, very fun. And
Thank you.
yeah, I'll reach out if I have anything I need to promote or whatever. I'll give you a shout, and we'll do this again.
I would love to. Absolutely, man. Is there anything that you're maybe want to tease right now, or
Well, I shot. So I I have been doing a lot of episodic television and feeling a little bit like I kind of lost my way with my soul a little bit. So I took a break and directed a few video game. I did the cinematics for Far Cry 6 and for Watch Dogs, which was
oh
super
wow,
fun. Yeah, I just like my agent was like, "What?" And I'm like, "Fuck this, man! This stuff is cool. I'm gonna go and do video games for." So I did that for like 4 years, and while I was doing that, I brought in a friend of mine who I had a company with when we first started in Calgary. A guy named Sean Jensen. He's like one of the top Steadicam camera operators in Toronto, and I brought him in to do some of the camera work, digital camera work. And he was like, "Man, I got gear. We should go back, rewind the clock and get a cube van and make something out of the back of a cube van." And I'm like, "Okay, let's do that." So I told a friend to write me a script, and we made a little kind of. It's not really a horror film; it's more like a supernatural thriller. But we did it with like my daughter was in film school, and we went out and shot this little movie with a bunch of film students, and I'm super proud of the way it turned out. So I might send you a link, man, and yeah.
I would love to watch it. That'd be
Yeah, that
awesome.
would be great. And you can be honest with me, but
Absolutely,
it's
yeah.
interesting, yeah. And I learned a lot doing it, but it gave me my soul back because it was so fun to be out shooting with a bunch of kids that were like third year film school, they were COVID kids, so they hadn't really been on set much. And to like I was like, me and Sean were like vampires, like just sucking their blood, getting our juice back to
Yeah, dude.
yeah, this is what it's fucking about, man. Like like whether this is good or not, making it feels good, you know? And
Yes.
again, we self-financed it. So we answered to no one, you know. It was just great. So it kind of it gave me my my spirit back, and I can't wait. I want to do more because it was really fun at mentoring the kids too, you know. And by the end of it, they were little filmmakers, you know.
That's
So
so
yeah,
cool.
yeah, it was really cool. What about you,
That
man? What
must
do you? Sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it must have meant a lot to them to be able to work with you guys
Oh,
as well.
huge. And but it was like give and take, like because again, both Sean and I had kind of felt like the rose, you know, was the bloom was off the rose, and we're kind of feeling like, what are we doing, man? Like we're making average TV for people that kind of don't care. And so we took away as much from the kids as they took from us. But yeah, it was awesome. Are you a filmmaker?
So my friend and I that I mentioned earlier, we made a short thing over like the span of 2 days. That might we're still editing it right now. We haven't really we haven't finished editing it, but we have aspirations for sure to
Good.
just to put something on film. You know,
Yeah.
excuse me.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like when I did my first film in 1995, we had to shoot it on 16 millimeter, and had very little film. We had to process the film. We had to actually cut the negative to make a print, like this was pre digital intermediate. So it was a very, you had to be a filmmaker at that time, you kind of had to be privileged, like I had
Yeah.
the privilege of being able to, live in my parents' basement and make a little movie, and like and I had connections and all that. And now, like, that was why we wanted to make our little film. It's called How We Ended Us. A couple years ago, is like, with the LED lights and the like the cameras, like we
Yeah.
shot it on a Black Magic camera that was like, it's like a $2,000 camera, and I've seen it projected on a 40-foot screen, and it looks great, like, so you guys have the advantage of being able to do it without having to have so much privilege. The downside is there's a lot of shit out there now. So
Yeah, it's very saturated.
yeah, we're having trouble selling our little movie because especially at this moment, like, there's just so much out there. So what that means is you can't do something average, it's got to have a voice. It's got to have it doesn't,
Yeah.
I don't think it has to look perfect, but it needs to feel fresh, and
Cut through the noise.
yeah. So
Yeah.
that's your hurdle, sir.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's fun, and like, even if we don't ever make anything of it, just to be able to say that we made a movie is like such
Yeah.
a cool feeling. And we technically have, we just haven't finished editing it yet. That's something that we're hoping to kind of do collaboratively. And then he lives in New York, I'm here in New Jersey, so that's been kind of the hurdle, is kind of being able
Right.
to do it at the same time. So
Yeah.
yeah, no, it's cool, man. It's well, thank you so much just for being
Yeah,
able to
man.
share those
For sure.
perspectives, man. It's
Cool.
That's what kind of why I like doing these little interviews, is just to get that
Yeah.
that very valuable perspective from people such as yourself. So
Cool. And yeah, when you get a cut of your film, if you want notes, send them my way, man.
oh, dude, that'd be awesome. No,
Yeah.
I'll definitely do that for sure.
I'm pretty
Awesome.
good. I'm good at constructive notes for sure.
Yeah, no, but please, no, no need to feel precious or anything. You can be as
Well, I mean,
as-
that's honestly, that's how you learn, is fucking
yeah,
up.
for sure.
That's how
For
you
sure.
learn. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you
All right,
again
dude.
so much.
Yeah.
All right, guys, those were my interviews. I hope you enjoyed them. I personally really am very grateful that I got to sit down with those two gentlemen and talk about this film with them, and hopefully you enjoyed it as well. So, guys, with all that being said, please take care and watch more movies.